Hello, my name is Nicole Kass-Colvin. I use she, her pronouns. And I've had the opportunity to be an advocate for about 5 years now. I've gotten to walk with, um, oh gosh, so many different people on their healing journey, including folks with disabilities. And so Sierra and Jen asked me to talk a little bit about um, that and some of the challenges that we see regarding advocacy. And so, um, really, as I think of the challenges um, in advocacy for people with disabilities, um, the number one thing that comes to mind for me is that we have this kind of culture where people with disabilities are marginalized, made to be invisible, and aren't necessarily supported with processes that are accessible. So, what do I mean by that? When I think of the processes that we have in place to help people, to keep people safe, to give people a feeling of justice, and to hold people who harm accountable, I think of things like our various systems. And I think there's a lot of work that we can do to make those systems more accessible. So, some main things that come to mind for me are that our systems that are in place, our processes that are in place, are designed for and by folks who are neurotypical and folks who don't have disabilities. So, um, our processes normally are things that move really fast, right? That don't have a lot of time devoted to them. Like I think of court cases that you're in and out the door real fast. You're not given the chance to really um, think things through, process, um, go at a pace that is most comfortable and accessible for you. Same with, any part of the reporting process. Um, Also, we rely so heavily on these processes, in these processes, um, on linear narratives and linear storytelling. So I've walked with a number of people who, you know, don't um, think linearly and don't speak linearly, and that's okay. That's, part of being human. We all think and speak differently, but our processes rely so heavily on that linear narrative, to the point that I've seen folks be prosecuted and accused of false reporting because they can't give a linear narrative, to the point that folks who come forward to report what's happened to them are, I don't know if it's not believed, but um, nothing moves forward with their case because the parties involved aren't always able to really kind of think outside of the box or hear what's going on in that non-linear narrative. Um, and we also rely so heavily on vocal communication, which not everyone communicates vocally. So if someone isn't able to communicate in a vocal way, um, that really isn't something that processes um, necessarily support. And so we know that through research like the socio-ecological model and things like that, that in order to best advocate for folks, in order to end violence, in order to create the cultures and the societies that we want to create, we have to be able to support those who are coming forward for help. We have to be able to hold the folks that are harming accountable, and we have to be able to keep people safe. So if we're not able to do any of those things because our processes rely so heavily on things that are made for folks who are neurotypical and who don't have disabilities, then the folks in our society that are the most at risk um, continue to be harmed. And I say the most at risk because we know that violence thrives with oppression and marginalization and creating vulnerabilities. And because we don't have accessible resources, because folks with disabilities are often um, in poverty because that's the way our resources and systems are set up. Um, and because we teach people with disabilities from a young age to rely on caregivers, to comply with authorities, um, to have their bodies touched, and to not have comprehensive sexual education, we are creating this environment where violence thrives. And so without these resources, without this infrastructure that really helps, you know, folks have resources, whether that's financial, whether that's legal, whether that's transportation, whether that's even just that comprehensive sexual education, we are creating vulnerabilities. So um, that would be what I would see as the main challenges and barriers in advocacy.